next week. But Carly, we miss you, girl. Always love having you on. But hello, ladies. Lot to talk about today. Let me know, audience, how the audio sounds and everything. Of course, if it's not peaking right and whatnot, if I sound too soft. All right. Can you guys hear me? All right. Good. Hello. Uh, so what do we have for today? Of course, it's been we got to talk about the cast report, right? I mean, that's the thing. That's the big news. Uh, mm, can they hear you guys?
A safe space for
There we go.
women of all shapes and sizes, and history, both in on the front of reproductive health care and care for transgender individuals. So pretty excited about that.
Hell
All
yeah,
right.
that's fantastic. It's good to see some counter momentum to all the nonsense we've been seeing going through the Bible Belt. And this isn't just about trans healthcare. It's also, as you said, reproductive healthcare. It's pushback on all the GOP nonsense
Absolutely.
trying to take away people's rights.
And also in the realm of good news, unreported good news, also from Europe. Uh, a a similar study to
Mm-hmm.
a similar review and report similar to the CAS review uh, is taking place in Germany, has taken place in Germany. It is currently being evaluated by the people that prepared the report to make sure T's are dotted. However, do Germans dot their T's or cross them? I don't know,
It's one of
but
each.
it comes to conclusions that are substantially at odds with the CAS review. And the reason is that they actually looked at the literature and didn't throw 98% of it out.
Do you suppose that Cass, much like the Florida report previously, they just looked at the literature and they said, "Oh, that's too much to read. I'm just going to set all that aside and say no, it doesn't exist."
Well, Dr. Hilary Cass actually played a little bit of a role in advising the Florida Department of of Health on that
Hmm.
report. So I
It's a dirty
wonder,
pool.
I wonder.
So to clarify, it's for the maybe not of our all of our audiences has got their finger on the pulse for this.
Probably
So
not.
let's break down what the Cass report says and who Dr. Cass is, right? Y'all want to?
Yes. What is the Cass report?
Yeah. Let's see. And it's basically a clap back against the NHS recognizing gender affirming care is what the Cass report is. It's a report claiming that essentially that it's a social contagion, right? Or that the majority of trans reporting individuals are subject to social contagion. That's always the root, though.
It buys into that narrative pretty heavily. What it is in I believe it was 2017.
It's 2020. It was the
2020. Well,
uh-huh.
yeah. The Cass review. Dr. Hilary uh, Cass was asked to provide recommendations to the English portion of the National Health Service on what to do about trans care for transgender youth.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been an ongoing process, and the final report was released Tuesday, and it's hideous.
It's incredibly I don't know how to put this lightly, incredibly biased. I mean, there's no other way to say it, right? It's
That's
built.
how the
It's got its
Guardian
own.
put it.
It got its own biases built into it. It's that she took the current, you know, findings of the NHS and what they built their current programs on, and said, let me find holes in this that I think are, and when it comes to evidence-based care, like what we see with gender-affirming care, tried and true, and they say that evidence is weak because that's the type of evidence it is, when that's the only type of evidence you can have on something like that, on something like identity.
Which is weird because as a pediatrician, Hillary Cass should know you can't ethically do double-blind trials with controls on children.
Right. Yeah. A violation of the Geneva Convention, right?
War crimes.
Yeah. Here, let's see. Steph's got it pulled up here. I'm gonna give you the floor for a moment, Steph, so you can go over what you're sharing with us here. Okay.
Yeah. Well, this will give you an idea. Basically, the commission of the report was to study, as I said, these issues around trans care for youth in particular, and there's a huge body of evidence in medical and scientific literature around the topic, but you can make anything do anything if you choose to ignore 98% of the literature. So the report claims, like the Florida report, UK report authored by Dr. Hilary Dawn Cass for England's NHS, bears striking resemblance in several respects to that of Ron DeSantis' 2022 Medicaid report. Why? Cass worked on both. Florida 2022, quote, studies presenting the benefits for mental health, including those claiming the services prevent suicide, are either low or very low quality and rely on unreliable methods such as surveys and retrospective analyses, both of which are cross-sectional and highly biased. Cass 2024, final version. This systematic review identified 53 studies reporting outcomes for feminizing, masculinizing hormones for adolescents experiencing gender dysphoria or incongruence. Only 6 of the 12 cohort studies were rated as high or moderate quality. And why? Cass excludes 98% of the studies examined because they do not include randomized clinical trials and a control group. And as you will see here, highlighted in yellow, these are the studies they exclude, and the reason, every single one of them, no control group.
You will want to read that though, Steph, because the audience it's going to be blurry for them. If you can.
Yeah, well, it's going to be blurry for me, for God's sakes. I should have known it would be blurry for the audience. Holy smoke!
You got to get them spectacles on, my dear.
Yeah. Denigrated, 1 level. The cohort study by blah 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 blah. Lack of blinding and no control group. And it goes on and on, each one of these things, just through all of these studies. So 2% of the information that's out there was considered. Now, some of you in the audience may be asking, well, yeah, I mean, double blind and control groups, isn't that the way science is done? It is in physics. Why? Because humans aren't involved. It is highly unethical. It's highly unethical to run a double-blind, a randomized controlled trial, an RCT, on humans when there is good, solid evidence that one method of treatment is effective in solving the problem presented. This is not new. The New England Journal of Medicine, in an article in 1991, has, you'll have to forgive me a little bit, I'm trying to catch up with all of this stuff, published an article of mice but not men, problems of the randomized clinical trial. As medicine is becoming increasingly scientific and less accepting of unsupported opinion or proof by anecdote, the randomized controlled clinical trial has become the standard technique for changing diagnostic or therapeutic methods. The use of this technique creates an ethical dilemma. Researchers participating in such studies are required to modify their ethical commitments to individual patients and do serious damage to the concept of the physician as a practicing, empathetic professional who is primarily concerned with each patient as an individual. Researchers using a randomized clinical trial can be described as physician scientists, a term that expresses the tension between the two roles. The physician, by entering into a relationship with an individual patient, assumes certain obligations, including the commitment always to act in the patient's best interest. As Leon Kass has rightly maintained, the physician must produce unswervingly the virtues of loyalty and fidelity to his patient. Though the ethical requirements of this relationship have been modified by legal obligations to report wounds of a suspicious nature and certain infectious diseases, these obligations in no way conflict with the central obligation, ethical obligation, to act in the best interests of the patient medically. Instead, certain non-medical interests of the patient are preempted by other social concerns. It goes on to speak about how the obligations of the scientist are quite different.
Oh, I see.
But, you know, if the physician hasn't, I'm just picking out, this is a really good thing to read just for background. If the physician has no opinion about whether the new treatment is acceptable, then random assignment is ethically acceptable. But such lack of enthusiasm for the new treatment does not augur well for either the patient or the study. In other words, if you have a huge body of work that indicates that a particular treatment is stupendously effective, then having a sample size of people with the condition that you're trying to address, given the treatment that is known to produce positive results, and a placebo, is absolutely unethical. It's completely wrong, because what you're doing is you're without the patient's knowledge, depriving a group of people from a treatment that will affect positive results. If the standards that the Cass review were mandated for everything, we wouldn't have fucking insulin.
Right. It's because insulin is a hormone treatment. People don't think about that when you think of hormone treatment.
We wouldn't have most of it. We wouldn't have statins. We wouldn't have a number of things, because once you discover, hell, this stuff works and it works great. Once you discover that, sequestering people into a control group, you take a sample of diabetics, you give some of them insulin, they're good. You put the other people on a placebo, they die. And to exclude studies that show dramatically that suicidality is reduced, that people are generally happier, that the rate of regret is very low, all of these things that Dr. Cass did not want to hear. And so therefore, what did she do? She excluded them.
Let me... You're good. I know there's a lot to say about this. It is and it's so fresh. Like most of the reporting on it's just coming in this morning, or within the last couple of days at least. So it's all very fresh and very frustrating. I did want to just take a quick minute to read what our friend Junie the Voice has to say here in the side chat, because this is why we're doing what we're doing. I can't express how much transitioning and going through HRT has helped with my emotional well-being. I used to take different medications for anxiety and depression, and none had helped, but this has. It's not instant and it can take time, but I've been almost 2 years since I've started, and I'm beginning to feel much better and confident than ever before. So yeah, that's beautiful, Junie. That's exactly like I'm saying. That's why we do this. That's why we're here. This is why we're here. Every day of the week is to help spread the message about this is what the trans experience is really like. This is what what our world is like, and to have all of this outside influence trying to dictate what our experiences should be is just so frustrating. So thank you for giving your inside perspective there, Junie. All right, I'm gonna pass the talking stick over to Ember because I know we only got Ember for a limited amount of time.
Yeah, pesky schedules and things. Yeah, as been to reiterate, like we can do clinical trials on untested things to find out if they work, if they help, because we don't know. We need to gain that data. But once we already know that the things are effective, taking those away from people and giving them sugar pills is literally withholding healthcare from people. It's unconscionable. And I don't it's frustrating for so many reasons, not the least of which on the cast report itself. It opens with a quote because it's very professionally done. Kinko's did a great job. Before the foreword, the quote is, "Medicine's ground state is uncertainty. Wisdom, for both the patients and doctors, is defined by how one copes with it." And that's from Atul Gawande, Complications, 2002. So Dr. Cass acknowledges that we have to be able to work within a framework of uncertainty, but then takes the evidence and the findings that we do have and says, not good enough, let's just not give anyone health care. What the hell?
Just strip it all instead, yeah. Because yeah, as Steph was advising too, the criteria that they're wanting to hold gender affirming care to is unprecedented in the medical field. It's not any kind of level that we hold any kind of medical treatment to. It's not any standard that we hold any kind of healthcare services to, because we couldn't. You couldn't have the entire field of behavioral health, which is, the study which a lot of the gender affirming care actually takes into, but the entire field of behavioral health would have to be nixed under these criteria, and they're willing to do that. They're saying, I am willing to burn down the entire behavioral health structure in order to own the transes. That's what else is it?
There are often circumstances wherein a new drug, for example, will be doing an RCT, right? You'll be going through stages of clinical trials, and they will discover in the midst of at some point during those stages that this drug is having a tremendously positive impact on the condition being studied, and they'll end the clinical trial and accelerate the drug towards approval. Happens all the time. Think COVID vaccine.
Yeah, and in the prescription industry is really shady about that kind of stuff too, with their with their clinical trials and stuff. So when we're trusting who's making those decisions, when you say that, it's the doctors that we're trusting, right? It's not the pharmaceutical companies that are making bank off of these treatment plans, because unfortunately, despite that they charge an arm and a leg in the U.S. for the services that are listed under gender affirming care, when it comes, and my volume's dropping again. Hold on, let me fix that. When it comes to who's reviewing the information, it's not the same group of people, and that's where you get a lot of this misinformation regarding the healthcare industry. A lot of people say it's these doctors that are prescribing these services, when those aren't really lucrative, right? There's not a lot of money to be made there. It's it's the actual treating physicians who are reviewing the information and saying this seems to work for patients with this condition while this does not. So that's what it's built on. Am I right, my ladies?
Yeah, that's how we determined that certain kinds of therapy that have been tried in the past don't work. Why being trans is not analogous to being anorexic or another dysmorphic disorder, because you treat those with antipsychotics in therapy, and antipsychotics in therapy have been tested on trans people and found to be completely ineffective because it's not the same type of thing. We know that from doing the science.
Yeah,
And
it's
yet
the
Dr. Cass would
conversion
just
therapy, right? Which,
Mhm.
as I covered last time, when I did my New Gilead section or segment, they're literally making insurance companies pay for in Florida. Your insurance company has to have a clause built into it to cover conversion therapy for your child. Wild times
Moreover,
we're living
it's
in.
moreover it's been studied for at least 70 years. This
we
isn't
we
new.